It is time for some Monday soul deliciousness. So hop on, say hello, tell me where you're from. Oh, what is this? Chat overlay. Oh, that's kind of cool. Got a new little feature there on my streaming software. Anyway, hop on. Jump on, say hello, welcome, welcome. So a couple of funny things that I'm going to tell you before I get all down into the seriousness of this is, first of all, I went to go live, and so I wear a hairnet at work. So that does not do anything fantastic for my bangs when I do such a thing. And so I was in the bathroom. I certainly have looked at myself a couple of times today, but obviously not really close. And I did keep thinking like, wow, I just look tired. I look really tired, but I am really tired. So I didn't really think much of it. And then when I went to get ready for the live, making sure that my bangs were not standing straight up. Good morning, Lisa. I actually left the bathroom, and I don't know why. I must have gone like this or something to my eye. And I was like, wait a minute. And then I did it again, and I was like, I don't have any mascara on. And so I went back into the bathroom, and I was like, oh, well, that would be why I look a little like not as lively today. It's because I totally did my entire makeup and did not do my mascara. And that was the first time. Good morning. Did I say good morning? I probably did. I don't know. Geez. Did I say good morning? Anyway, I didn't put any mascara on. So, just roll with it. All right. So tonight, guys, I'm going to share with you a couple of really cool things. I'm going to share my full story, which I actually have never done before, like from the beginning to the end, of how I got to this point in life. And I don't know who you are sending me a message on Messenger, but yes, hello. I am going to do it. So it's going to be probably a little interesting. And then we're going to talk about why it's important to not carry all this around with you because of some, things that can happen. Also, we're celebrating. Hi, Lynette. We're also celebrating because I literally must own approximately $10,000 worth of redone material. Okay, maybe not that. I mean, I really don't know, but could be. Hi, Lee, welcome. But I own a lot of redone stuff. If you're like, I don't know what redone stuff is, well, it's basically most of the stuff that's behind me that you can see that are cups and things, right? So like I have all my markers and a Girl Boss mug. I mean, I have 2 mugs up here that I look at all the time. One says dream big, make it happen. So it's kind of my thing. All right. Today, I was like, oh, I super need to get some water for my live. Okay. And I was like, huh. And I think to myself, you do see bunnies. Yes, bunnies are radon. I think to myself, well, I need a cute mug. And then I laugh because I'm like, well, heaven knows that you have a mug somewhere. And I was like, well, I've never actually used a redone mug for it to be a mug. So I have all these mugs and all this redone stuff, and I've never actually used one for its functionality. Putting the markers in the cup was the furthest I've gone, and that's only because I actually have 2 of that one. So I was like, no harm, no foul. And then I was like, man, I really am going to do this. So tonight, my friends, I'm about to take a sip for the first time in my life out of one of my redone mugs. So if nothing else for this video, we are breaking some, we're making a headway tonight. So this is my Survivor mug, which will go great with my story, but and everyone's like, what are you drinking in that mug? It's just orange flavored water, honestly. So, nothing too exciting. Bringing the party on hot tonight. What can I say? Okay, so here we go. Grab yourself your own favorite mug, a cup of whatever you want, and let's hop into this. So I'm going to tell you about my story. Okay, so obviously I was born, so we'll start there. That's a good place to start. I actually don't really remember much before then. So my parents are really young. Um, get married maybe because they needed to, had to, were encouraged to. We'll just leave it at that, right? So parents are young, get married. I know right off the bat, my mom always has told me like I was not, and this is going to be really surprising to a lot of you. By the way, if you're just joining, you've never seen me or watched me before, I am very sarcastic. So as we talk about some of these very serious things, just know that I'm all sorts of like up and down and all over the place. But my mom was like, you're the type of baby that you just wanted to be left alone. So you would just spend hours in your crib, happy as can be, looking at books. And if somebody tried to pick you up or wanted to cuddle with you, that was a no-no. And, when I feel my mom's pain because she said it was really hard as a first time brand new mom to have a baby that wouldn't cuddle. And I'm like, it's kind of like a cat, right? You know how your cat like sort of acts like it wants to be petted and then it like rips your hand off? It's kind of the same thing. So parents were super young. Yes, Lisa just shared. So I'm going to put a plug in too as we're sharing this story. So I always give away socks every week, and you also get a free healing session with me. So if you would like to be entered to win, you can share any of my videos. These are the socks we're giving away this week. Happens to be pancakes because pancakes are delicious. Okay. So yes, you can share any of my videos. All right. Then let's see. So then I survived that. Obviously, I'm born. I'm still here. I didn't die from it. Then about the age of 2, and I'm guessing it's about age 2 because I remember the house that it started in, the house that it happened in. And so I know that I was definitely younger than 5, definitely younger than 4. So somewhere between, I'm thinking the age of 2 and 3 is when I can remember this. But when it actually started happening, couldn't tell you. So yes, like many of you, and that's the whole point of this, right? As I go through and tell you all this, is I don't want you to have had to gone through this, but the thing here is, why am I sharing this? Is because I want it to resonate with some of you as well, so you understand where I'm coming from. So then between the ages, starting at about 2, I think until I was probably about 12, maybe a little bit older, I was sexually molested by a family member from that entire period. I'm certain looking back, I don't know at what point like I had that moment where it clicked, which I always tell parents this when they're like, oh no, my child isn't being sexually molested because they haven't ever said anything. And I'm like, yeah, but here's the thing. There's lots of reasons why kids don't talk about being molested, because they either think that they're going to get in trouble, the perpetrator, the pedophile, whatever, the person molesting is telling them like, if you ever tell anyone, your family will be ruined, right? There's threats going on, but also because simply, like in my case, this happened to me when I was so young, I didn't know that it wasn't normal. So why am I going to tell anybody? Because I thought that this was something that happened to everyone. And so I didn't realize that it was not normal until probably something in society, something clicked, right? And then I was like, wait a minute, this isn't happening to everybody. And I don't know that it's supposed to be, right? And then you go through the hell because you tell your family, and I told my mom, and, no harm or foul. I don't hold anything against my family. I'm sure they were just doing what they thought, but we just kind of, put it under the rug. Which didn't stop it from happening, unfortunately. But there you go. I don't like to look back, and there's no point in looking back and blaming anyone for anything. Okay. So let's see what else. I started, I guess you could call hitting puberty when I was in the 3rd grade. I remember being like the only girl in the class that was wearing a bra. So, I got that fun, like got off the bus and neighbor girls pulling on my bra strap and people were making fun of me. I was, as my mom always told me, I was just big. I was thick. I was big boned, whatever. So I was probably a little on the heavier side for my age. And of course, really super cool little those really super cool little graphs that they give you your whole life as a kid, where they put your dot where you're supposed to be. Yeah, like, right? What do I remember? Imprinted into my mind. I was always way above the little scale for my weight. So nothing like beating your kids up when they're little by, enforcing negative beliefs and then wondering why when we grow up we're psychotic. Okay. All right. So overweight, potentially wearing a bra in the third grade. So then let's just add some icing to the cupcake. Okay. Super abusive father. My dad was very mentally and physically abusive when I was a child. We should also couple that with the fact that I am the only child that he did that to. As far as the level that it got to, it did not happen to any of my other siblings. I happen to be the oldest. I think that part of it is my personality. I've had my own dad call me a bitch before. We could go on and on, but the thing of it is that, he tried to blame it on me and say, well, it was your personality. When you were born, you didn't even like me. And I was like, okay. So yes, once again, like, right? Pack all that negative belief into your head, because certainly if your parents tell you it, then it's got to be true, right? Okay, so there we go. So then I get into high school. I really do not associate well with any of the people my age. Like, I'm just not living it. I hate it. I want to be out of there so bad. So I fall madly in love and I get married my senior year over Thanksgiving break. So, that's probably not the best thing. Senior year of my high school, I get married. Actually marry a really good guy. I think I got really lucky there. Married a super good guy, is very respectful, very kind, very caring. I start going to college. I'm going to be a teacher. Then I decide to live my dream. I always wanted to be a pilot. So I decide to live my dream. So I have 2 kids in the middle of college. And now I've figured out, like, I'm kind of getting into my power, right? Probably a lot of that has to do with getting away from people that were beating me down mentally. So I now was married to someone that was like, you can do anything you want, like a really super someone who absolutely saw my potential. And so he was super encouraging, like, if you want to be a pilot, be a pilot. So I did. And then it was like, well, if you want to join the military, then join the military. Like, I have super faith in you. And I did. It's amazing when people start to have faith in you, like the beautiful things that can happen, right? That was just the 5-year-old slamming the door. I see him outside now. Okay, so then things are pretty good with that. Like, I have my kids. I'm in college. I remember the best story about when Chayton was born. So Chayton is my 17-year-old. And I was going to college in a class. I was taking a class that I did not understand at all. It was something to do with electronics. It was a basic electronics class that I had to be a pilot. And I had a lab partner. And my lab partner was he was a lot younger than me. He answered your question, Lisa. Yes, I did. And the response that I got was definitely I didn't know better, whatever. So I walked away from that one, and I just don't associate with the person anymore. Here's my thought is on confronting people. Okay. You have to be okay with the response that you get, because you can't make someone respond the way that you think that you should. And if you're okay with that, then do it. But you have to realize, and I love doing this. It's like a scenario that I play in my head. How will I feel if I get this? How will I feel if this happens? If you're going to confront your molester and they're going to deny what they did and say that it never happened, is it going to make you feel worse that they're doing that, or are you going to be okay with it? That's how I tell you how to make that decision. Okay. So I did confront them. I got some stupid excuse, Hufflepuff, and I just was like, yeah, okay. So I just walked away from it. I'm not going to try to change somebody. Okay. So, right. I'm in school. My father-in-law is a hardcore meth addict. Okay. So I'm dealing with the fact that I live in this little tiny town, and my father-in-law is honestly raping and pillaging the town. Horrifying things are going on. And so it's a great escape. We join the military, we run away. So basically at this point, if I self-reflect, I'm like, all I was doing was running and running and running, right? Running away from toxic people. So then I get into the military and I'm like, here I am, like, right? This is so awesome. I'm making a beautiful income. Things are great. But then I start having some issues with my then at the time 8-year-old. And so I start noticing some little things, and little things like he's telling people, like when I am home, he's telling people, or when I was deployed, he would tell people, yeah, my mom's just in the basement. My mom's in the basement. So kind of some things are going on psychologically. And then I'm realizing, like, as I come home from a deployment and I go to hug him at night, he'll say things like, you're not my mom. My real mom died. So it kind of starts to get alarming. And I'm like, okay, do what every parent does, right? Like, we're going to get you into some counseling and some therapy. So I go talk with this person and therapist, and he starts to explain it to me, and it makes pretty good sense. He says, okay, so number one problem is your son and your husband are a temperamental mismatch. Now, this is a biological father-son pair. So I was like, I don't even know what that means. But then I figure it out, after looking into this, right? It means basically that they have like a temperamental issue where they just don't get along. So I'm like, oh yeah, like I have a temperamental mismatch with my own dad. So kind of get that there. But my husband wasn't doing like abusive behaviors like that. It was more just like an inability to connect with him, which then led to some favoritism of my other child, which, is hard to watch, but nothing along the lines of what I went through as a kid, for sure. But anyway, still a problem. So I'm definitely, he's definitely got more of a connection with me, but I'm gone all the time. So I have a complete mental breakdown. I actually remember being in California, going and doing a sim, which is where you fly. I was learning to fly UAV, which is the airplanes that you fly from the computer. So I had finished flying the mighty KC-135, and I was flying UAVs. And I remember just like this, like I felt so disconnected. Like I couldn't figure out like what was going on the computer screen. And I had a meltdown. And I remember the instructor being like, what's going on? Because I had been doing so well in the class. In the military, they rank everyone constantly. So they were like, you were like top of the class. Like you just failed a sim. What is going on? It was kind of a moment where I was like, you know what? I absolutely freaking hate flying anyways. And I realized that I had only done it all because I was trying to be that person. I was trying to be that person that I wanted my dad to be proud of. I was trying to be that person that I wanted my husband to be proud of. I was trying to be that person that I wanted to be proud of, that person that I had pushed all my life to get A's, and I lost my mind. And I started going to be evaluated, because the military is not okay with you just deciding you don't want to fly. So I started being evaluated. I then tried to get out of the military, and I'd actually tried once before then when my kid was having issues, but this was kind of my melting point, right? It's because I saw my kid wasn't getting better, and we had just moved to California. And when we first got to the house we were renting, I remember my kid going upstairs, and we were trying to get him to go somewhere and putting on his socks, and he was freaking out because he didn't like the way the tips of the socks, the seam, he didn't like the way the seam fit on his foot. And so he freaked out and he ran upstairs and he slammed the door and locked it and told us he was going to jump out the window. Well, this was a 2-story house, and the whole outer edge of this house was boulders. So you're not going to survive if you're jumping out a window. So we're freaking out, trying to break the door down. And then later on, I caught him. He was in the closet trying to tie a tie around his neck. And so that's what led me to kind of that mental breakdown. So I try to get out. My commander is like, yeah, I think this is going to work. Like, I'm getting letters from different therapists. I'm pleading my case. I'm putting in a packet and I'm submitting it for like hardship separation, I think is what it was called. And you can see it as it travels. It has to be signed by so many people. So at one point, my commander's like, yeah, this is going up to the White House. I think it's going to get passed. And so I was like, okay. So I take some leave, some vacation time, and I move my family back to Idaho and we buy a house. And the day that we close on the house, thank you, Becky. The day that we close on the house, I get a phone call from my commander. So I'm in Utah. He's in California, 12-hour drive one way. And the commander says, yeah, so I hate to tell you, not really probably like that. It's probably a little different, but he's like, I'm going to need you to come back. And I was like, what? And he's like, your package got denied, so I'm going to need you to come back. My heart slipped out of my chest, slithered right through my stomach and out through my toes. And I was like, I just bought a house. And he's like, yeah, that doesn't matter. The military owns your soul, so you have to come back. And so we had a business at the time. We had a direct sales company where we made manufactured food mixes. So I'm like leaving my husband and going back to California to run this business. And I'm going back to California and I'm living in a hotel and I'm trying to find an apartment. And I have a folding table and a inflatable mattress. I'm living the dream. I did go and purchase myself a frog shower curtain just to bring some joy into my life. But that's all I had. And so here I am sitting in California knowing that my kid is struggling and my family and everyone is living without me. And the military is like, what are you going to do? You can try to I'm supposed to move to North Dakota. But North Dakota is not closer to Utah than California, in case you're not up on your geography. So this is not going well for me. But I'm the type of person that, like I talked about this morning, I don't want to sit back and be like, why am I in this situation? Why is this happening to me? Why is all this going wrong? I'm like, no, how am I going to change this situation? I don't care about the why. I just want to know how. And so I start fighting and I dig. And so I email my congressman or representative or something like that. And I'm like, hey, I need to get out of the military. This is what's going on. And in the meantime, I think I took another vacation. I went home. Oh, I totally forgot this part. I go home again to visit my family and my kid gets freaking pneumonia. The 8-year-old that is the one I'm worried about gets pneumonia and dang near dies. He's in the hospital for like 6 days and dang near dies. And the military's like, you got to come back. And so I had to get a hold of the Red Cross, right? Because once again, I'm like, no, I need to be here with my son. And they're like, you're out of leave. You have to come back. And I'm like, no, I'm not. So I get a hold of the Red Cross and the Red Cross has to contact the military and tell them that my son is in the hospital dying. And so, they're like, you probably, if you could let her stay there, that'd be cool. So because I have a Red Cross waiver, I can stay with my kid. So he ends up pulling through that. We have to take him home with an IV. He has to go get like infusion things put into his arm every day. It was horrifying. And so during the time though that I'm home, one of the guys that I used to be in the military with reaches out to me and tells me that he is in the guard unit in Utah, just randomly. And I was like, oh. And so guess what I do? I make it happen. I get myself an interview while I'm home on vacation and I go interview with the guard unit and I hook myself up with a job, right? Because where there's a will, there's a way. And so these guys are like, yeah, we'll take you. So the active duty at the time wasn't letting people out to go do that, which is called a palace chase. It's transferring from active duty to a guard unit. And they weren't representative, my congressman or someone like that involved. And I filed this petition with the Secretary of Defense at the Pentagon. And I worked my paperwork packet up to the Pentagon. And I got it approved. So I picked my heart back off the ground, stuck it in my chest, and then I was like, all is well. And I moved back to Utah and I joined the guard unit. And I thought, this is it. Life is good. I got a sweet little teaching gig up at Utah State, teaching a private pilot ground school, and we were running my business and things were good. And then I was traveling, doing my flying thing. And then it's just, my kid kept having issues. And then the guard unit was like, yeah, we need you to deploy. And I was like, oh. I mean, to tell you what that meant to me was like having a peanut allergy and having someone tell me I needed to eat a jar of peanut butter. Okay. So I was like, oh boy. So things at home are actually falling apart. My husband finally tells me, you can't deploy because this is what's going on while you're gone. Because I was still gone a lot, and so I wasn't seeing it. And I was like, okay. So at that time, I tell the guard unit, I'm like, I can't do this. Like, I'm afraid my kid is suicidal, whatever. They were really great. And when you're in a guard unit, they can let you go of your contract. It's not like active duty. They only own the left leg of you instead of your whole body. So they can release you. They just take your foot. So I leave the military, and I think I didn't actually fully get out, but I'm in process. And then I come back, and then we're trying to figure out what we're going to do because we have no money. Our business is actually going, it's just not, things are not flowing. My husband is super acting weird. And I'm like, I don't even know what is wrong with you. So to the point where he's like not able to almost pick out his own shirt for the day. And I'd be like, hey, you need to make an order. We sold jams and jellies was one of our things. And I'll never forget. I was like, you need to order jam and jellies. And he's like, which flavors should I get? And I'm like, we do it the same way that we always do. So we had like, our jams and jellies were on like a shelf. So you could easily see which ones were gone. So you just ordered which ones were gone. And then you ordered extras for any that we needed that were in order. I mean, we had a process for this. So I was like, do the process. It was almost like his mind had just like frazzled or something. So we start going into counseling and realize that like he's almost become like one of my children. So we decide with therapy, and we decide together that we should probably get a separation. We need some time apart so he can start to piece himself back together, because what he's done is he somehow is living through me and doesn't know who he is anymore. So literally like doesn't like anything that I don't like and doesn't do anything that I don't do. Like I remember, and I'm not an advocate for tanning, so don't think this is an advertisement, but I remember going tanning once because I was going to go to a training. We had to wear these hellacious short shorts, and I was like, not showing up for this. I mean, I'm doing one of those things where I look back now and I was like, no, my legs were great then. Like if I could trade, right? Like you do when you're like, oh, if I could be fat like when I was 12. Anyway, I decided to go tanning so I could not look like a pasty white zombie. And I went tanning, and then realized like a few days later that he went tanning. And I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, I went tanning because you did. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So just kind of some weird things like that. So I end up going through a bunch of training. So I get another job, and then I'm home, and I'm starting this career. And it is just not going well at home. Like we're basically living in separate rooms. We're just communicating to communicate. We're trying to get therapy. Like it's just not going so well. Then I remember that I decided to go look at a house. And so I took him with me because my overall hope was, hey, maybe we can make this work. And then we can use this house that we're separating from as a rental at some point or whatever. So we leave the house, and we're in the car, and this house is off a highway that is like 65 miles an hour. And he pulls out onto the highway in front of a truck, and the truck has to go around, and we almost die. And I sat there for a minute, and I was like, did you just intentionally try to kill us? And he wouldn't say anything. And I was like, okay. And I realized like how bad he had gotten at that point, because he had just tried to kill both of us on purpose. He didn't say anything. He remained in complete silence. We drove back to the house. We got out of the car. I went in the house. He was supposed to go to sleep because he was working graves. I grabbed my kid. I was like, hey, we need to go to the store. We need some bread and milk. And so we left. Now, my husband had just come home from a sand dune trip. So if you don't know what that is, basically you take your four-wheelers, you go to the sand dunes, and you ride around. So he had our horse trailer hooked onto the back of his Yukon. So that is not something that you just like go driving around town with as your horse trailer. Like you would unhook it and then drive around. So when we came back, it was gone. And I'm like, that's weird. It wouldn't have been so weird if he was gone, but it was really weird that the horse trailer and the Yukon were gone. And it was really weird that he was supposed to be sleeping because he had to work graves that night. And so I'm like, where is he? And then I just had this feeling, right? That, when I tell you guys, man, that energy feeling when you just know that something's happened to someone, that same way that I connect with people, I knew. And all it felt like was, I was like, he's sitting on a train track somewhere. I can feel it. And So I call the police. They're like, hey, do you think he's a threat to himself? I'm like, I don't know, because now I'm like, wait a minute, like an hour ago, he tried to kill both of us, right? So their first thing they say is, why don't you check and see if any of your guns are missing? So we have all of our guns locked away. And I tell my son, I'm like, hey, would you know if one of the pistols was gone? And he's like, yeah. So I have to get my 13-year-old son, and we're going through the gun cabinet, because he's a lot more familiar with the guns than I am, with which ones we have. I know which ones are mine, but I don't really know all of them. And the poor kid says, yeah, there's a pistol missing and 5 bullets or 4 bullets. Now, one may say, how do you know your bullets are gone? Because when we go shooting, we always shoot a full box when we're practicing, and there were 4 gone from a box. So it's pretty obvious. So now we don't know where he is, but we know he has a gun. So then I get told, you got to put your kids in the car and you got to leave, because you don't know what mindset he's in. He already tried to kill me once, right? I've actually never even shared this with anyone. So this is why we share our stories, though, right? Okay, so I leave. I go to my mom's. She lives like 30 minutes away, 15, 20 minutes away or something. I go to my mom's and I wait and I wait and I wait. And I know that they have found his vehicle, but it's parked outside of a really wooded area. So they can't just go busting in, right? Because they don't know what he's doing. So I have to wait and I have to wait. And they finally bring in some infrared. So now it's like 11 o'clock at night. And I decide, I'm at my sister's. So I decide to leave my sister's to go back to my mom, but I have my mom with me. My kids are not with me. My kids are with my dad. So we decide to leave my parents and go back to my mom's house, but we are like parked at McDonald's because I was going to get my kids some food, and the McDonald's is closed. Well, as we're sitting there, we're in a different county. We're in Utah. He's missing in Idaho, but really close. Like we're right on the border. And I see the car go by for the sheriff's office in the town that I live in. And I say to myself, and I look at my mom and I'm like, well, that's weird. What are they doing down here? And my mom's like, what do you think they're doing down here? And I was like, honestly, for a split second, I was like, I have no idea. That's weird. And immediately, I got ran over by a freight train. Like I knew exactly what they were doing. They were coming to tell me that something had happened. And so I am like, no, I don't want them to get to my parents' house before I do. So I'm driving. Don't ever do this. I'm driving like 100 miles an hour. I remember, it's funny now. It's not funny at the time, but just know, I remember my mom screaming in the seat next to me like she was on some kind of psychotic roller coaster ride without a seatbelt. So I drive the 5 miles to my parents' house. I swerve around the cop. I rip into the driveway. I get out of my car and I just see them and I know, right? And you get the, we're so sorry. And I knew, right? Like, you just, what do you do? My kids are in the house. I'm scared of my dad. This is the same abusive dad I grew up with. So do you know what I did? This is how horrible this is. I tell the cops, I need you to get my dad out of the house and I need you to take my dad outside so that I can go in and tell my kids, because I'm afraid that if I go in and tell my kids in front of my dad will become abusive with me. How messed up is that? Like, I'm a grown woman and I'm afraid my dad is going to abuse me or say something to me in front of my kids while I'm telling my kids that their dad just died. Okay. So they do, though. My dad's outside. I tell my kids that I can't even remember what I said to them. I don't even know what I said. Something along the lines of, I want you to not be worried about it. I'm going to make sure to take care of you. But dad is gone. Right. So my husband had, I'm going to share another really crazy detail with you that I've never told anyone except for Becky. Unknowing that my husband was going to take his life and being in the course of study that I was in at the time, I had learned about suicide. And I had learned about people that commit suicide with a gun and they don't do it correctly. And so in having a random conversation with my spouse one night and talking about this and all the photos that I had to see and talking about exactly how you shoot yourself in the face, and that is exactly how he shot himself in the face. Try living with that one. Okay. So, yeah, I pick up the pieces. I go back home and my town completely goes crazy. Rumors start flying that I shot him myself, that I committed some kind of murder. I got the police officers to hide it. I mean, it just was crazy to the point where my mom was like, you need to stay off social media. People in my community, my religious community, that were all super helpful and loving, like the day that we found out, were now shunning me. The people in my church, the visiting teachers, the people that are supposed to come and help you, just all walked away. I had zero support. My kids were told they were getting sub for Santa because my husband had died. Actually told my kids they were getting sub for Santa, and then they were like, no, we're not going to do sub for Santa for you because of all the rumors that they were hearing. It was horrible. So then I meet this guy that I grew up with. His mom actually babysat me for a while, and I meet him and we start chatting a little bit, and I realize that he's also the widowed person to my mom's previous best friend. So Dave's wife had passed away a year before from a kidney issue. So here I am, all tattered and torn, and I decide that I start talking with Dave, and we have this connection, and I decide that I don't want to shack up with him, and so I get married. And neither one of us should have been, and we were both incredibly toxically not healed, and so it became a very abusive, crazy place. And then you do really dumb things when you're not in a good spot, like you decide you want to just, have a bunch of babies and it'll be great because you're going to start your life over, and you're all running from things because you're not dealing with past trauma. You're just like running from it and trying to find things that'll make it feel better. So I get pregnant with Tayson right away. Okay. And so he's my 5-year-old that I have now. And then we decide we want to have another baby right away. We're just going to have 2. We're going to have them really close. We really want a girl because we have all boys. I get pregnant 10 times. So basically I'm getting pregnant at 6 weeks. I'm losing the baby. One time I get pregnant and keep it until 12 weeks. And then I deliver my baby in the middle of my bathroom floor. And it was horrifying. Absolutely horrifying. I thought I was going to hemorrhage and bleed to death and die. And I know this is probably way more graphic, but if you were to ask Dave what that looked like, he said it looked like someone had been slaughtered in our bathroom. Okay. Where do we go from there? So then we decide we're not going to do this anymore. We obviously got something going on because I'm miscarrying. So Dave gets a vasectomy and I find out I'm pregnant. And so we're like, okay, well, what are you going to do? So I start spotting like I always do. And I go into the doctor and there's a heartbeat. And I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm not going to lose this one. And so then we make it to our 20-week ultrasound and we find out it's a girl. And then we find out she has a heart defect. And then we find out that it's a heart defect that nobody knows anything about. So, hey, now we're just going to spend the next 20 weeks not having any idea what is going on. And we know that we have to deliver at a place where they can take care of her. They're going to rush her away. So she's born. Everything seems great. We're excited. We feed her. She's not on any oxygen. We are like so blessed. And they're like, yeah, we think actually you guys are going to be able to take her home. By the way, having a baby and then having your baby taken away from you immediately is horrible. But then when you realize that you're also in the wing of the hospital with all of the people that are there because they had their babies taken away because they're drug addicts, and that they put you there so that you don't have to listen to any babies crying, is kind of a little bit humbling. Okay. So yeah, here I am day after I have my baby and I'm walking around and basically Zippo, any taking care of myself at all. And then I enter into a spot where my daughter on her second or third day of life, she gets a horrifying infection in her intestine and they have to cut her open and remove her colon. So then she gets aseptic and almost dies from that. Then she comes back. So she's there the whole time for 26 days. So in this time, my husband is 2 hours away. I'm living in a camper in the parking lot at the hospital by myself with her every day. So she's in the hospital. I'm in the camper. So then she ends up starting to get a little better. And then she gets septic again because they missed a spot. So they have to cut her open again and take out more of her colon. So she's on a full-blown colostomy bag, laying flat, right? Like they're rotating her. I can't hold her. She's hooked up to everything again. Then she starts to get a little better. So now I can hold her. I'm reading her Alice in Wonderland every day, and she's starting to get better. And then we take her off of some of her medication because we have to get her off of it so I can go to the next spot in the hospital. And so she's progressing beautifully. And then I go downstairs and I'm in the camper and I get a phone call from the nurse. And she says, "Are you still here?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Your baby is coding." And I was like, okay. So I'm running from the camper, running through the hospital, running up the stairs. And I will never forget, I walk into the middle of that room and I look up and there's my daughter and she's just laying and she's dead on a metal table. And there are just, I don't even know, tons of people. All I can see is the top part of her head and she looks like she's dead. And they're trying to resuscitate her. And the nurse says, "Do you want to go in there?" And I'm like, "No." Right. And then there's a part of me that feels kind of guilty because I don't want to go in there, but I didn't. And so finally they get her to stabilize and they're like, "Okay, so is what we think happened is we took her off her medication thinking that she could be okay without it. And there must be something else going on with her that we can't see. So tomorrow we'll start doing some more tests and we'll see what's going on." So the next morning, and keep in mind, I'm there by myself still. So the next morning, they do the little heart ultrasound thing and they're like, "Okay, so we see this thing that we didn't really see before that's now worse than it was." And I'm like, okay. So basically is what they're telling me is the doctor says, "So you have these flaps that open and close in your heart. And so when the blood comes down, these keep the blood from coming back up. Because it can only go one way, right? Or you're not getting the oxygen and everything that you need and everything carried up." So the guy says to me, the doctor says to me, "So the problem is that your daughters are like this. So they're going like this." Okay. And he goes, "So there's no way that her blood is basically coming right back out through where it's going in. And so she can't get enough oxygen in her system to keep her alive." And I'm like, okay, right. I'm in this heart unit. Like every baby around me has something crazy like that. And they have surgeries every day and they're working miracles. So I'm like, okay, cool, fix it. And I said, "All right, so what are we talking? Like this is gonna keep me here for a little while longer. What are we talking about?" And he says, "There's not a surgical procedure to fix this." And I was like, okay, still, I'm like, sure. So they're going to, put like a machine in her or something, right? And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he said, "There's no way to fix this." And I remember looking at my nurse that I love so much, Nurse Mary. And I remember Mary looking at me and she just hugged me because she knew, right? And I was like, "Are you saying that you can't do anything to make it better?" And he said, "No." Once again, I'm alone, right? And so I end up having to meet with like the transplant team and they're like, "Yeah, so your baby has so much infection. She's so septic that that she probably will never be a candidate for a heart." And this is really, if you want to talk about, when you want to talk about where I get my, like, I don't care about anyone's opinion. You do what you need to do. This is where this comes from. It's this part of my life because I remember the transplant team telling me, and we had to meet with all the surgeons and the surgeon said, "Operating on your daughter will be like operating on tissue paper. If you want me to do it, I will, but she will die on my operating table." And he looked at me and said, "Please don't ask me to do that." But that's what happens, right? Parents get desperate and they keep going until there's nothing else that can be done. And so I made a really hard choice that that's not what I wanted my daughter to go through. And this is the really sad part, is that all the medical people were telling us, "Don't tell anyone what you're doing." Don't tell anyone that you've decided that you're going to take your daughter off of her life support, because you will be judged and people will not understand what you're doing. And I remember my nurse telling me, this is the greatest sacrifice as a parent you can make, is to make sure that your daughter stops suffering. Because she says, I watch it all the time where people will just keep their child alive when there's nothing that can be done. And that's what they were telling us. Like, we could keep her alive, but eventually her little body would give out. And so we made the decision that we would help her to pass peacefully. And so they did a beautiful thing for us where they actually set Dave in one recliner and me in the other. And so we had our knees touching each other and we just held her. And Dave hadn't been able to spend very much time with her. So he didn't ever really get to see her when she was really fully awake and alert. And so she did the most beautiful thing for him. When we took her off of her oxygen, she popped right out of it, which was also heartbreaking because I was like, whoa, because now she was like trying to talk to him and gooing. And then I was like, what are we doing? And so I had to have a moment with myself where I was like, if this is meant to be and she's supposed to survive, then God will work a miracle and that's what will happen. And of course she didn't, because her body couldn't do it. And I really, truly, looking back, think that was her little blessing for Dave, was that she did that so that he could have that moment with her. Anyway, she ended up passing away while she was on Dave's chest. And then he let me hold her. And I had never held her up like this because she had so many things. So I took that moment to hold her like that. So, and I'm going to make a joke because that's what I do. We ended up giving her a bath and we got her all ready and we wrapped her up like a little burrito in a yellow blanket, and I carried her on my lap while we drove 2 hours. And I kept telling Dave, I hope we get pulled over. I hope we get pulled over because I want the cop to give me a ticket for not having my baby in a car seat. There's no other way that you can deal with this kind of stuff. That's how I deal with it. It's my sarcasm. It's my morbidness, whatever you want to call it. Because it's my coping mechanism. But taking my daughter into that funeral home and setting her on a metal table and leaving her little body there was very, very difficult. So, okay. That is my story. And then I remember that I came right back to that Amy's the strong person. I went to work the day after I buried her. I remember being the one that was being strong for my mother-in-law, telling her, you know, when we were burying her, we were covering her casket. Because Dave, how crazy is this too? Dave was the sexton at the cemetery. So Dave buried his own daughter and his own previous wife. So talk about having a lot of stuff to deal with. But I remember telling my mother-in-law, I was like, it's just a banana peel. The banana inside is gone. It's just the banana peel. It's just her, you know, mortal body, whatever. Okay, so now we're going to fast forward it here. So here we are. I decided to share that story with you for a couple of reasons. One, because I hope that there's something that's happened in your life that is parallel to you being able to pick on something that I went through, right? We all have a lot of different things that we've been through, but I hope that me sharing with you something that I went through helps you to know that you are not alone and that you can come back from this. I know there are people that have been through way more things than I have been, but people would say to me when I was pregnant with Kinley, they would say, oh, God's not going to let your little girl die because you and Dave have already lost both your spouses. Like, that's never going to happen. So what do you think that puts into your head after your daughter dies? Ooh, a little bit of anger towards God, right? Why did he let this happen to me? What did I do to deserve this? Well, part of the healing process and part of this journey is knowing that you don't deserve things like this. This isn't what this is about. This is about the cycle of life, and things like this happen because this is the way that life flows. Okay, so where do we go from here? Here's what you need to know. You got to find techniques to let this stuff go, because if you don't, Your body is in a trauma mode. It goes into fight or flight, which means that your sensory nervous system, your central nervous system, your peripheral nervous system, all these systems, they're in fight or flight response. So when you are in fight or flight, right, it's to save your life. Oh, you got to run. So all of the blood flow in your body goes to your muscles. It gets taken away from your digestive system. You don't need to digest any food if you're about to die. Your kidneys everywhere. No, you don't need to be doing anything because you're about to die. Well, when you do this continually and you live in this state every single day, it starts to damage your body. Things are not being filtered out right. Toxins are not being filtered out right. Your organs are taking a toll. It's damaging your immune system. Your cells are not thriving. And then they start to deteriorate. It's like driving a car at full power. If I get into my kid's Q, whatever that thing is out there that he just bought, Q5, Q10, something, and I just jam on the gas, and that's how I drive every day, what's going to happen, right? You all know a part of his car is going to break. Something's going to happen. It's going to break down. Same thing's happening to your body. You cannot go around in fight or flight all the time, or you start to have things break, and it shows up as number one, a symptom. So then I get a little symptom and I'm like, ooh, what's that? And then I continue into fight or flight because symptoms making me do it more, right? Because now I'm like, oh, not only am I in fight or flight and I'm stressed out of my mind, but oh my gosh, now I think I'm getting sick. Well, now I'm just sending myself into fight or flight even more. So now I'm getting more symptoms. And then there's a weak link in the chain. And somewhere in my body, I have a tire blowout, right? And now I have a disease. And now the problem with this is in modern medicine, we have all these beautiful things, but we also chase symptoms. Pharmaceutical world loves to make money, so they love to give us things that help us with our symptoms. Medical field is shifting. It's a gigantic paradigm shift, but still we're looking for a quick fix. So we're going to chop out some organs. We'll just remove your, pancreas and you'll be fine. Put you on some medication and send you on your way. But it doesn't really fix anything because the underlying issue is I have trapped trauma in my body. I have stress in my body. And if you don't believe it, go look it up scientifically. Stress is absolutely proven to be the number one reason why we have illness. Okay? So find techniques, find what works for you. Yoga, meditating. It's a journey. But if you're like, I can't do this anymore, right? You all know I do energy healing. It's basically what we're doing is removing those blocks so that stress toxins will release, so that the energy flow in your body can come back again, because you, not me, you have the ability to heal yourself. All I'm doing is acting as the ability to help your body to get back into a state of balance so you can heal yourself. You do not have to live this way. How do I know that? I see it every day. I see it from someone that just says, oh my gosh, I lost 10 pounds this week. I haven't been able to lose weight in 30 years. I see it from people saying, my mother started talking to me again. She hasn't talked to me for 10 years. I don't know what's going on. I see it with, oh my gosh, I don't have any pain anymore. I mean, I see some of you on here that I've helped as well, right? Things like, I've been waiting for this letter I needed to get in the mail. I've been waiting for months and months and months, and I did a session on a Monday morning. My letter was there. Like 3 days later, this letter shows up. I have some blocked energy from being sexually molested. I have some blocked energy from losing my mom when I was 4. I have some blocked energy from getting in a fight with my husband last week. I have an imbalance in my back that's making it so I can't work, right? So you can get to this spot yourself, but yes, there are ways to help you get there quicker. All right. Now, you know me, I'm not going to sit here. I'm not a used car salesman. I'm just letting you know there's always that option. So, okay, you guys, I really hope that that's inspired you. I really hope that you were able to pick up on some of that. Take from my strength. You can. I give it to you willingly. I give you that beautiful energy openingly. I want you to have a beautiful journey. No one should be living in misery because you do not have to. Is it a super easy process? For some of you, it is. For some of you, it is really easy. For others of you, it takes a little bit more work. And then that's the other question. Somebody's like, how many sessions does this take? It depends on you. So for some people, like Amber, Lisa, I know you guys had some relief with just a session. I have some other clients that it takes a little bit of time, maybe 3, maybe 5. I have some people that just like to do it all the time because it makes them feel better. But please just know, if you take anything away from this and you're feeling like you are at the bottom of your barrel right now, you can climb out of the rabbit hole. I will throw you the rope. You just have to grab onto it. I will pull you out. You just have to grab it. Okay, guys? All right. I got to go get my potatoes out of the oven. Thank you for joining. Remember, if you want to win a pair of socks, I do give away free sessions once a week on Fridays and a cool pair of socks. Socks today we're doing pancake socks. I'll give these away on Friday. All you have to do is share any of my videos that I do. I go live every morning at 7:15 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, and then I always do Monday Soul Deliciousness at 6 p.m., which is how you found me tonight. All right, you guys. So love you lots. Don't forget to sparkle and have a beautiful night.